So we have a grocery pickup this morning and we need to stop at a few other places along the way today. But I figured I'd go ahead and get our lunch done and in the fridge. Well, this will actually be our dinner, but in the fridge and ready for us to just munch on tonight when we get home. So I'm just making some cornbread, and we're going to have cornbread salad tonight. So I am making about a double batch of cornbread. You don't need this whole amount, but I know that my mother-in-law will want some cornbread. If I'm making some, she always wants me to make her some, so I'm just doubling it now. I have the oven preheating to 425 and I have my cast iron already in there. We're just going to crack 2 eggs down into our bowl. I'm using the Pearl Milling cornbread mix, so this already has the flour in it. If you don't have that, you can just make your own cornmeal however you like, or even buy the Jiffy boxes. I know that's not something that's a popular opinion, but I love my Jiffy mix. So I added in 2 large eggs. I'm going to add in a couple tablespoons of oil. You can also use shortening. I do personally like a little bit of sugar in my cornbread. You don't have to. A little bit of salt and about 3 cups of milk. I also have this buttermilk that I need to use up, so just going to mix it all around. And I like to make sure this has at least a minute or 2 to sit before I pour it straight into the pan, so it soaks up all of that liquid and I get a nice soft cornbread. I just added in a little bit more buttermilk. Alright, now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and make our dressing. So I want about 1.5 cups of mayo. And we're basically just making a homemade ranch dressing right now. You want equal parts mayo, equal parts sour cream. Okay, we're going to add in a package of ranch seasoning mix. I'm going to stir this all together. So the reason we're making this so far ahead before we go do our grocery shopping and everything, one is because I'm emptying out the fridge. So I'm using up a lot of this to make space for the groceries we're going to pick up. And 2, it just gives those flavors a chance to marry together and gives a much better overall taste. Plus, after we get home from grocery shopping, it seems I never want to cook anything, like anything. So this way we can at least scoop and go. Now I know we will have lunch in town, but at least this will save us for dinner. Pause for a little coffee. Alright, so I'm going to put some of this away, and as soon as our timer goes off, we're going to pour our cornbread in. So I'm using a 14-inch cast iron, so it will easily hold all of this cornbread. If you're using a smaller, like 10-inch, probably do half the size. But again, you only really need 1 batch of cornbread for this recipe. I'm making some extra so I can take across to my mother-in-law, and I know that's what she's going to munch on all day. Plus, we have a ton of beans left over from yesterday's lunch. Y'all like my fancy little container? Y'all, I grew up in a household where we saved the butter dishes, the whipped topping, all of that. And I still do because it's so easy to just put leftovers in there. And then especially if you're giving it to my mother-in-law, she doesn't have to worry about washing that dish. She doesn't have to worry about returning it or remembering to return it. I don't have to worry about my good Tupperware going anywhere. It can just go, and it would have been in the trash anyway. So why not get a good use out of it. We use those a lot in our compost for our composting bowls on the side of the counter. All of it. I just waste not, want not. All right, y'all. So we're gonna put this in the oven at 425 for about 20-25 minutes. Now while that bakes, we're gonna go ahead and prep everything that's going to layer into our cornbread salad. So the best news about doing this is almost all of the food we're using is leftovers. And like I said, I try not to waste. These have already been washed. I just put them back in the container. But try not to waste and make sure everything gets eaten. So I'm just going to take these grape tomatoes, and since they are ginormous, I'm just going to chop them up roughly. They don't have to be anything perfect. We're just going to use the same knife, same cutting board. Our bell peppers are already mostly chopped up. We had them with some dip the other night. So I'm just going to roughly chop up some of these bigger chunks. You want one bell pepper chopped up. And again, same cutting board, same knife. I'm going to chop up some of this purple onion, just pulling off the outside that doesn't look the greatest anymore. Now I am going to leave these in kind of larger chunks so that my kiddos can pick them out, but feel free to make a smaller dice. And then our fourth and final corner is just going to be a few slices of cucumber. Now we don't always add the cucumber, but I've been trying to make myself drink some cucumber water just for inflammation purposes. I know, too much information. So I figured I'd use this last little bit and throw it in here as well. So just some large chunky dices. And that is our cutting board of layers. We also have about a half a pound of bacon from breakfast the other morning. I'm going to crumble this up. And we've got a can of corn. So we are all assembled, and most importantly, our pinto beans. Now we won't be using this whole container. What we don't use of this and what we don't send over to Nana we'll end up putting in the freezer. But you need about a can's worth of pinto beans. And we will layer this as soon as the cornbread comes out of the oven. Okay, y'all, our cornbread is all out of the oven. I did let it sit for just a minute so it wasn't like scalding my fingers. But I'm just gonna flip up half of this. So if you're making one batch of cornbread, you're gonna take half of your cornbread right now. Even though you'll see me taking a quarter of it, I'm saving that other half for my mother-in-law. We're just going to crumble it down in the bottom of our bowl. And you can do this in a casserole dish, anything really that you can get some good layers in. We're going to move this over just so we can pull our bowl a little bit closer and make it easier. Now this is the super fun part. We're going to just add in all of our layers. So you want to layer in half of everything. So about half a can of pinto beans. We are using some dried beans that we cooked. These are just leftover. And then about half a can of corn. Half of a red onion. Some cucumber. Half of a bell pepper. 1 to 2 tomatoes chopped up, or half of a pint of grape or cherry tomatoes. And then about half a pound of bacon. I'm going to use my scissors and just chop this up down in here. Since this is from a day or two ago, it's not super crispy anymore, so it doesn't tear as easily. And you could cut it to chop it as well. All right, and then we're going to pour half of that ranch dressing mixture that we made. I'm going to sprinkle on some cheese. And then we're just going to repeat the layers, and we'll press this down as soon as we get this cornbread on it. So it really packs it in. I'm just going to pack it in and repeat. Then the second half of that dressing. And last but certainly not least, the remaining cheese. All right, y'all, we're going to put this in the fridge and let it sit, and we will have this for dinner tonight.